Boy, another crazy day in expansion. The ACC expanding again. Are Stanford and Cal really ACC expansion candidates? And I would tell you, absolutely they are. And I want to get right to work on this because tomorrow could be another one of those days, specifically in the ACC, where we're looking at a situation where we are going to get a vote tabled in the ACC tomorrow, according to sources close to the show. The ACC is looking at voting, and not just a straw poll this time, a legitimate vote about adding Stanford and Cal to the conference. And this is going to have wide-ranging impact across the landscape of college football, because let's not forget, this isn't just about the ACC. This is 4 conferences deep. You have the ACC, the remnants of the Pac-12, the AAC, and the Mountain West. And the Mountain West started this process 2 weeks ago in the driver's seat with almost a rubber stamp approval from the remaining 4, and that's never come to fruition in any way, shape, or form. We went through the ACC process, no ACC expansion. Not close, there was never a vote. We were telling you that Miami, North Carolina, Florida State, and Clemson were standing in the way, refusing to be part and parcel to ACC expansion. Well, we're going to find out tomorrow again, because sources close to the situation tell us that there has been significant lobbying activities over the last 4 days, and that, in fact, there will be a conference call tomorrow where a vote in the ACC about ACC expansion will be taken for Stanford and Cal. I have not, and I want to clarify this, I have not one time been told that SMU is going to get a vote tomorrow in the ACC. I am told that vote will specifically point to Stanford and Cal joining the ACC and ACC expansion. Jake, do you believe it actually happens this time?
Yeah, I think that there's definitely momentum, in the conversation, but I'm not in a place where I actually believe that it happens. I think that, there's still a lot of hurdles in this process. There's still a lot of questions that remain about, whether it's the travel thing, right, which seems to be what everyone wants to talk about. But, whether it's that or whether it's, hey, are we just going to travel to the East Coast for, football and basketball, and then maybe our Olympic sports stay regional or something? Like, there's all these complicated questions that come with joining a conference that's across the country on the other coast. And so I look at this and I say, Stanford's a damn good athletic program. Obviously really well run. Obviously has a lot of value that way. And I'm just curious, what the philosophy is moving forward if you were to join the ACC, because obviously, having to travel a lot, there's the whole conversation about what that does to a student athlete, and we can have that conversation. But I think right now, what you're really considering, if you're the president, the athletic director, or hell, even the chancellor, and you're looking at this opportunity, you're really trying to consider, okay, well, what is the P&L sheet look like if we join the ACC? I mean, what exactly are we going to have to do to make sure that we stay in a good place financially in our athletic program? Because you look at the major difference, the one slap you in the face difference between Stanford and Cal is money, right? Cal is in massive debt through renovation of their football stadium and otherwise, whereas Stanford is in a good place. So to me, if I'm Stanford, I'm not going to do anything that really has huge risk. Obviously, moving conferences has risk all the way around, even if it's the Mountain West, right? The Mountain West is just straight up less money. That's why they don't want to do that. But the problem is your next best option is clear across the country with a ton of travel implication, which means a lot of money implications. So that's why I say I'm not believing that this is actually going to happen, but I do think that there's momentum in the conversation. People feel more positively about it. So that's why I think you're seeing a vote, because people want to really have a test about where everyone in the conference is at on this topic. And I just think that Stanford is in a place where they need a home, and they understand that, and they got to do something about it.
Well, and I think The Athletic has done a spectacular job reporting on this. Stuart Mandel, Nicole Auerbach, like their entire college football staff has been really good on the particular angle of the Pac-12 collapsed. What's next for Stanford and Cal? Mm-hmm. And I think one of the questions that The Athletic hasn't answered yet is who in the ACC is holding up expansion. I believe our sources have been very correct on the fact that Miami's that other team that nobody in the ACC wants to talk about. Miami does not want expansion. I can tell you right now, Florida State, Clemson, and North Carolina do not want expansion, because if you bring in Stanford and Cal, I think it's more difficult to break the ACC grants of rights, whether that is right now, whether that's in 5 years, at any time before 2036.
Seriously.
Which is ridiculous again. But, hey, this is the bed you made. Enjoy lying in it. But I think that's one of the biggest factors in ACC expansion and why I don't believe this is going to happen. Because if we are really believing that Stanford and Cal are getting into the ACC, I think there's a couple of things at play as it was described to me. I was told the politics of Stanford and Cal are simply unwanted in the ACC. And I think we have these, and it's not a conversation I want to have on this show, please, but we have a political climate in this country where California is viewed as those goddamn liberals out there on the West Coast.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of that in the ACC. And there's a lot of membership in the ACC, as it was told to me this morning, that don't want to deal with the geopolitical situation in Stanford and Cal. And I have to tell you, I think that makes a lot of sense, because you're going to bring in Stanford and Cal. And if you believe for a moment that 5 years from right now, Stanford's not going to have considerable sway in the ACC if you let them in, I think you're crazy. Because the one thing that Stanford is not going to be influenced by is your money. They don't want your money. They're going to take your money. They don't need your money. So their decision is not going to be swayed by your money. And whether it is that they take a $10 million payment and the rest goes equally divided to the rest of the ACC membership, great. Whatever it is, Stanford doesn't care, because they have over $1 billion sports endowment.
Yeah.
$1 billion endowed to sports alone at Stanford. They don't care, and they don't need your money.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that scares the Florida States, the Clemsons, the Carolinas, the Miamis of the world. Those are the 4 universities in the ACC who are in lockstep that they don't want the ACC to expand. So somehow, some way, between really what was Saturday afternoon, I was told, until tomorrow, when my sources are telling us that there's going to be a call tomorrow where a vote will be taken.
Yeah.
Not this straw poll word that's going around, but not kind of nobody's checking the temperature.
Yeah.
There's a vote that's going to happen, and I don't believe there will be anything past that. My opinion is, I don't think there's any way Stanford and Cal get into the ACC.
Yeah, and I think that, again, a different show, but I think it's unfortunate, that politics and people's opinions in that area of life, impact these conversations. But the reality is they do.
Isn't that why there's resentment to Notre Dame?
Yeah, exactly. Right. Like and we do see it. Like Notre Dame's a great example. I mean, you see it in a lot of different ways. I mean, the one of the longest running jokes on this show is truck stop conference. Right. So in a way, I mean, we see this concept pop up in college football realignment all the time. All the time. And so I just look at this and I say, yeah, sure. Are they taking a vote? Yes, they are. Does that mean that I feel confident that Stanford and Cal are going to get into the ACC? And the answer is no. I don't feel confident about that, because whether it is the political stuff, whether it is, Stanford's stance with their money and how that intimidates other schools, because I totally get that. If you're a Florida State or you're any of these other, institutions in the ACC, yep, and you may not necessarily be in that well off of a position, yeah, I probably wouldn't want to be dealing. Yeah.
You mean Cal?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I mean, if you think about, that's a very interesting point, because your level of financial desperation tied to athletics, mm-hmm, either helps you or it hurts you. Mm-hmm. Cal does not have a lot of voice here. And I look at SMU. SMU's got all this money, but they have no voice here.
But all their money is a little different in a way, right? Where
very different.
Stanford's this institution, and Cal is kind of the same way in this light, where you have heritage and you've done some things in the past. Stanford, I would say, is a little more valuable in that aspect because their winning and their success is relatively recent. But I think when I compare like Stanford's money to SMU's money, dude, SMU's money is just a bunch of dudes in the oil industry and otherwise who have a bunch of money and they pool that money together and they want to use that money to get somewhere.
Influence.
Stanford's money is, hey, here's the bird. We're the number 3 institution in the country, educationally speaking. And by the way, we don't feel any pressure athletically to do anything because we have all this money just sitting around. We're quite literally so wealthy, and we already have P5 status that we don't have to necessarily be in a hurry from a financial standpoint.
Stanford really does have FU money. There's no question. SMU has it, but I think there is this conversation about SMU, and nobody seems to be able to figure out the value that SMU brings. And I'm happy to have the conversation again, especially with SMU fans. I have not been able to, and we talked to one of the most influential donors at SMU.
Yes.
This person could not deliver us a value proposition.
Well, and that's their precise problem, right? So again, it's the difference between, and again, it's not really a fair comparison, right? I mean, we're talking about a Power 5 institution, Stanford, and then you're talking about SMU, with all due respect, right? It's not really a fair comparison, but we're comparing them because of this. So when you look at it, it's like, yeah, Stanford has all the money, but that's not the point with Stanford. The point with Stanford is education, and yes,
but that's not the
successful
value proposition.
Yeah, for SMU, that's all you have.
Yes.
SMU is just saying, hey, hey, dude, we can cut you a check and we can join the conference, but what do we really do for the conference? Because it's not like we're, some powerhouse football program that's just waiting for Power 5 funding to go out and do great things. I mean, that's not what they are. Even though they look great and they've got the uniforms and they've got the facility, that's not what they are. So,
and I actually, one of the points that I think is important here is I think the Mountain West, the AAC, hell, the other 3 members of the Pac-12, they are all waiting, knee pads in tow, to slurp at the doorstep of Stanford, right? Like, if we're being honest, I mean, the amount of, I don't know, what is the lack of reverence, the lack of respect for Stanford in the ACC is actually quite admirable, because they're the only ones who are like, yeah, bro. And one of the people I talked to about this situation said, well, the ACC's got Duke. The ACC's got North Carolina. The ACC has all of these institutions of higher learning. They don't respect Stanford the way that the Big 12 and the Big 10 and the Pac-12 did.
Well, and I think that what's funny when I hear names like Duke and all those folks.
Duke.
When I hear names like that, I'm like, yeah, you're a great educational institution, sure.
Duke.
I mean, you're not Stanford, but
Duke
educationally, you're strong.
Duke.
The difference is that what do we get with Duke and North Carolina and these different ACC schools? We get you on ESPN, with Zion's fat ass breaking his Kyrie, right? Like, we get, Duke, UNC. We get these great matchups regularly on ESPN all year round. And so that's where I say, and this is where I know we disagree, but that's where I say, like, dude, like, you're not on TV regularly. You haven't had success in football and basketball in the last 5 years.
Just couldn't let it go.
No, I'm not going to let it go.
Because
with Duke and UNC, that's the only thing they have over you. That, hey, we go to the tournament and we do some things. Like, they're not even that good in football, right? UNC is like this nice little flash in the pan football program that you see on SportsCenter once in a while. They're not a college football playoff team. They're not beating any of the SEC teams, right? You've got a nice little quarterback, and that's about it. So I don't want to hear that, hey, they're a great football program. Those are basketball schools trying to figure out how to football.
Right, but I think, I don't know, that's interesting. I look at I look at North Carolina a little differently. I think that North Carolina is a really phenomenal institution. The Big Ten would add North Carolina today if they could. I think Duke is a phenomenal institution. It's a basketball school. God bless David Cutcliffe, but you haven't made Duke a football school. You're a basketball school. And Daniel Jones is amazing for the Giants. Duke is a basketball school.
Duke is ranked 10th in education nationally.
Yeah. I mean, that's pretty damn good.
UNC is ranked 21st.
And so my point is, I don't think that there's all of this reverence and respect for Stanford in the ACC.
Mm-hmm.
That clearly is not the case. But the money thing matters, because I think if you're SMU and somehow you get into the ACC, you're under their thumb because you're desperate. Yeah. Stanford's not desperate. I think Stanford would rather be independent than be somebody in debt to the members of the ACC like SMU will be. Stanford, I don't think is going to play that card. And on the other side of it, Miami, North Carolina, Florida State, and Clemson, I think under no circumstance will vote yes to add those two schools.
Yeah.
I don't know how you get that to happen. I again will tell you the dysfunction in the city of Miami is pervasive at the University of Miami. That is a private institution who does not give a damn what most people think.
Yeah.
And I'm telling you, the political climate in Miami is a wreck. It just is very difficult to navigate Miami waters. Honest to goodness, I don't think you have any chance to turn them. I think the two institutions that would only consider this are Clemson and North Carolina, and I think that's maybe a 5 or 10% chance.
Well, and I think the question of, hey, why would the ACC do this is really relevant. I mean, again, you know, when I look at the schools we're talking about, it's not like we're talking about, you know, again, like juggernauts in athletic recently. Stanford, yes, has history. Cal's history, I think, is not relevant because it's been so long ago, you know, and they've just been so troubled the last decade in both football and basketball, in my opinion. So that's why I say I think Stanford's biggest issue isn't even that the ACC, doesn't necessarily value them at the highest level. Stanford's biggest issue is that Cal is just not a good look right now. Cal is in debt. They're not going to help you athletically all that much. Like, there's not a huge reason for a conference to take on that debt load. Now, if you said, hey, it's Stanford and whatever premier school out of the Pac-12, Stanford and USC.
But
okay.
but this is no. This is the Oregon State argument. Because
Precisely.
Tell me that Oregon State doesn't bring far more value than Cal. The problem is Cal is a phenomenal institution for learning.
Yeah.
It is a wonderful, wonderful academic structure.
Yeah.
The problem is, like, I look at these quotes from Oregon State athletic director Scott Barnes, and I think he makes a really interesting point. Read this quote right here, and really it's the last couple of sentences here. Scott Barnes, the athletic director at Oregon State, said, "We're in this spot where I think the waters are less murky than they were a few days ago, but they're not completely clear. We're waiting for the waters to clear. That'll help us understand the path forward." In other words, as my source told me today, you're twisting in the wind waiting for Stanford.
Yes.
That's what's muddying the waters, according to Oregon State.
Yeah.
And I love Scott Barnes. I have a hell of a lot of respect for him. But, dude, you have no leverage here.
Yeah.
You have, as the Big Lebowski would say, you have no frame of reference here, Donnie.
Facts.
Right? Like, Walter was exactly right about Oregon State.
Yes.
You have no frame of reference here, sir.
Yes.
And Washington State, you are a pathetic, terribly run institution that is broke. You have no influence here. And so the real question is, if Stanford does not get into the ACC, which I don't think they will, where do Cal, Oregon State, and Washington State end up? That's the great mystery.
Yeah.
Because this idea that somehow the AAC is going to dissolve itself, that is not going to happen. We've told you for several weeks now, Oregon State and Washington State have invitations to the Mountain West. And I think if Stanford does not get into the ACC, most of the people I speak to say Stanford will go independent. They will merge with the and I use caution here because there is a split opinion if every member of the Mountain West Conference comes to the Pac-12. There is, I don't believe there's a consensus on that. Excuse me. There's not a consensus on that. But the consensus is that it makes no sense for West Coast schools to live a Midwest lifestyle.
That's fucking interesting, man.
It makes no sense. And that the better fit is in the Mountain West and the Mountain West becoming the Pac-12.
Yeah.
But by the way, one other thing that I think is very interesting, George Kliavkoff, I was told today, is done in the Pac-12. He has no voice in this. He essentially is a clerical employee at this point. That George it has almost no influence on any part of this discussion.
Yeah.
I was told that Oliver Luck really has just been a facilitator, that he's not been a guy that's been on the phone throughout the country, that he's kind of been a guy who's setting up conversations and really trying to help Oregon State and Washington State find a path to somewhere else as a P5, which is probably not going to happen. But I think this entire process hinges on Miami, Florida State, Clemson, and North Carolina. I think those four schools control this entire script and this entire narrative, and Oregon State and Washington State find themselves in an incredibly unadvantageous situation of waiting for Stanford to get into the ACC or not. Because I think one of the other things that's a reality here is at some point you've got to stop waiting for Stanford to do something.
Yes.
And you got to move on with your life because they don't have schedules for a year from now. They do not have football schedules for a year from now. Basketball, baseball, they don't have those schedules. And I think one of the fascinating parts of this whole situation is I think their only home is the Mountain West.
Yeah.
Because if you are going to take, like, you look at has anybody, and you probably have not, has anybody taken a few minutes to go and look at the membership of the AAC? Has anybody, have you looked at that? And I think most people have not. You're looking at universities, with all due respect, like Sacramento State. You're looking at North Texas. You're looking at Wichita State. You're looking at, Florida International. You're looking at Temple, Old Dominion.
That's quite enough. We get it.
How does that work with Washington State, Oregon State, and Cal?
It doesn't.
How do you make your living when you have one university in the AAC, Sacramento State? And I love my friends in Sacto. Used to live there. God bless you, Fair Oaks. Love Sacramento. Sacramento State is not a P5 university.
No.
And there's no common sense for these three remaining members. And sure, throw in Stanford for 4. There is no common sense to add Stanford to Florida International. It makes no sense. The crown jewel of the AAC, in my opinion, is South Florida, the Tampa market.
Yep.
I think that's your crown jewel there. It's not East Carolina. It's not. It just isn't. And I look at all of these universities, and I just say to myself, I don't know what you do here, man.
Yeah, you don't go to the AAC. You vet out the ACC, and then you make your decision. That's your path.
And I think that's all you can do. And I don't know how you fix this. I mean, you look at SMU and Rice. Those are two great universities, man. But they don't perform. They do not perform. And again, this is not a solution.
No.
And I know so many people are pushing this, create an east to west, fully national conference.
No.
For what? For what? What does Oregon State versus Florida International mean in football?
Not much.
Does anybody want to explain to me how Temple versus Cal is exciting in any one of the 20 sports they participate in?
No.
And again, There are a lot of good schools here. Memphis is a very nice institution.
It's not about good or bad. It's about the fact that you're not a P5, and it just is what it is.
It's not a fit.
Yeah, and people get all butthurt about P5 versus G5.
Butthurt.
Dude, people get all pissy about it, and it's like, I understand that you don't want us to say, hey, SMU is just not a fit in the ACC, but what else are we supposed to say? I don't know. Quite literally, their own people can't tell you why they'd be a fit in the ACC. So there's no value proposition. You go around the American, and you're like, dude, like, what? Like Stanford and then this group. One looks a little different, right?
If it's the AAC, Stanford's going to go independent.
Yeah, and so then I asked Stanford, okay, so what is it about the Mountain West you don't like? Because the Mountain West saves you a lot of money, simultaneously costing you a lot of money, of course. And there are some decent brands in that conference, but ultimately, like, if you want to go independent, fine. But don't cry me a river in 3 years when you can't get into a conference when they're expanding, dude. It's going to be difficult, I think.
I would not do it. But again, I will just sit here and say, I don't believe that the AAC is going to add Stanford and Cal. And nobody that I haven't spoken to one person who's like, oh, this is a done deal. It's a done deal.
Yeah.
Everybody I talk to says, well, you know, Miami's that school that's just never going to budge.
Mm-hmm.
And you could probably bribe Florida State. You could, I think, again, you could probably work with North Carolina a little bit, although I don't think there's any chance you're moving Miami and Clemson. That's just my opinion. And I think Florida State and North Carolina are very difficult.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's because they don't want to be there. You're not going to. Notre Dame torched this last time. I think you were actually closer last time than you were this time. But I think Notre Dame's obsessive pounding on the head of that nail. Adam.
God's name, image, and likeness.
Okay, well, Adam, if you'll join in football. No. Adam. That was the rub last time. This time, it's Condoleezza Rice and W and a lot of influencers.
Yeah.
And this momentum and negotiations and just all this conversation behind the scenes about what Stanford and Cal are willing to take.
Mm-hmm.
And I think I truly believe that Stanford's at a breaking point where they're tired of the bullshit, where they're like, okay, dude, I'm done with this. You guys want us? Okay, great, we're coming. You don't? Okay, we're never going to talk to you again. I think that's where Stanford is. Because the thing that got me asking questions was, well, I think it was Nicole Auerbach at The Athletic reported there's a new sense of urgency from Stanford.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, well, what's the new sense of urgency? And the people that I spoke to said it's not really urgency as much as it is they're just done with the process.
Yeah.
They want finality, and they want to start building 2024.
Yeah.
Which makes perfect sense
Totally
to me.
get it.
It makes perfect sense to me. So, hey, there you go. That's it. I see a lot of people joining the show right now. Please hit the thumbs up button. Give us a like. It really helps the channel grow. If you are new here, please consider subscribing to the show.
Do it.
We are trying to get to 25,000 subscribers before kickoff of college football season, and we are less than 2,000 away. Every one of you makes a difference to us. Thank you for being here. I cannot tell you enough how much we appreciate you. We are also a lot of people asking us about the Oregon at Texas Tech tickets. We got an avalanche of submissions today.
Got an update, baby.
We're going to play some video for you in an hour to show you who the contenders are. But again, we are giving away a pair of tickets to Oregon at Texas Tech. You see it there, September 9th.
Yes.
And it is going to be amazing. It is all presented by our good friends at Bucked Up Energy, and you guys have been amazing. Do you want to enter this contest? All you have to do is interact with Bucked Up Energy. So whether that is, hey, take a video of yourself like I'm about to do, drinking a buckshot. Hey, if you want to take a video of yourself doing that, hey, that's really good. Hey, do you want to go to buckedup.com, use the promo code Monty20 to get 20% off at purchase at buckedup.com? Do that. but this is one of the hottest tickets in town.
Mm-hmm.
It's sold out. You can't buy them unless you pay exorbitant prices. So hook it up. Let's get this done. In about 25 hours, we are going to announce the winner. 3:30 Pacific, 6:30 Eastern tomorrow. We are going to announce the winner of this here contest, and I cannot wait. An hour from now, we're going to play the submissions that are in the lead, in our opinion, because they are phenomenal. So, Jake, cheers to you.
Yeah, cheers.
Yeah,
let's get fucked up.
This buckshot's for you, baby. Ready to rock and roll. Buckshot, 200 milligrams of caffeine, gives you a mental lift, powers you through your day. I love it, you guys. I play a lot of golf, as you know. Not well, but it gets me through the back nine. You know how you get tired sometimes? Pop a buckshot, you feel much better. Get a free sample right now in the description below. Buckedup.com, the official energy provider of the Monty Show. Less of us, more of you. Let's shout out
Damn.
Let's shout out post-nasal drip. I'm working on it, you guys. I'm working on
Hey,
it.
you're doing well.
Eating me up right now.
Yeah, you're doing well.
Once
you're good.
a year, every year.
Yep.
For about 2 weeks, I deal with this little cough that turned out to be post-nasal drip. So Advil allergy sinus is getting a lot of my money right now. Big shout out to Ryan Willie.
Let's go, baby.
Let's go, Ryan, the newest member of the Showgram. By the way, you can hit join for $1.99. All your comments get highlighted and read. For $9.99, you guys, our Instagram members only chat is phenomenal. The group of guys that are in there are just fantastic. There are conversations about sports, life, food, sex, your mom, you name it. It goes on in that group.
Yes.
For $9.99, you get membership to that group. Great community there. So, Ryan, appreciate you becoming a member of the show. I thank you guys so much for supporting our show here, because without you guys, we wouldn't have one. Hugh Jazz Gamer 247, a member for 3 months now. Hugh, thank you. Guys.
Hey, guys.
Have a great show. Thank you.
Hey, guys.
Stephen Smith, a member for 3 months. Thank you. You guys have been nails on everything realignment. Thank you. We appreciate that. Matt Riley for $5. YouTube machine, or as Michael Crow calls it, 23rd century technology.
I had someone
it's still
tweeted
amazing.
me. Dude, I had someone tweeted me today, and I noticed this yesterday, but I think it's worth noting. In one of the clips we played yesterday, Michael Crow mentions the fact that the college football playoff is expanding. And what did he say? Oh, yeah, it's expanding to 8. No, sir. No, it's not.
No, it's not.
No, it's actually not, sir. So just a little cherry on top for all you ASU haters out there.
That's what I'm saying. Welcome to Star Trek Next Gen, Monty. Thank you, sir. Appreciate you. Oh, James Knight.
James,
giving
bro.
us $2.99 Australian. Great program yesterday, guys. Very enjoyable. Hey, coming up in 90 minutes, we'll talk NBA schedule release.
Makes its return today, bro.
And how many people hate the Lakers? We're going to find out, because the Lakers are going to get run. Talk about that. Domer Wop!
Hey, Domer, let me guess. You're going to make another booster seat reference today.
Nope. For $5, he says, Monty, you really are an intellect on all of this. And you have tremendous amount of integrity. That's so incredibly rare today. Thank you. Oh, I appreciate that. Thank you, Domer Wop, my fellow Irish Italian. Thank you very much. To Larrick for $5. Only value SMU brings is it makes it harder to break the ACC grant of rights. Well, firstly, I would tell you the value that SMU brings is it allows you to put Texas on your list of territory. I don't believe SMU delivers Dallas or the state of Texas. We've talked about that.
Yeah.
But it also is somebody that's so damn thirsty that they're not going to take a penny from you for 5 years, because they have donors who are willing to pay SMU athletics $200 million a year for the next, 5 years, or $200 million over the next 5 years to compensate for the lack of media rights income.
Yeah.
That's what they bring you. So you're saving yourself, a pretty good chunk of coin that can be rebated back to the other members to make them happy.
But that would be more valuable if SMU was doing anything in athletics of note. I think if SMU had the ability to say, okay, yeah, you know what? We understand that you can't get us the pro rata we deserve. We understand that we can't get that in the ACC. But hey, our football team can scratch into the AP top 10 every week.
Yeah.
No, it can't. That's just not where it's at.
Yeah.
And I think that's the value piece they're missing. So it's like the conversation of does it matter if you win on the field or not is ever evolving. And in my opinion, it's always has been and always will be case by case. Because, again, imagine for Stanford. Imagine if Stanford was some garbage educational institution. If they were like 250th in the country.
Hello, West Virginia.
Right? Dude. You wouldn't, dude, you're going to piss off Morgantown, okay? Look, Ray Anderson, relax, okay?
Okay, they're not going to be pissed off. They're out cleaning coal. It's fine. They're not here
Dawn
yet.
dish soap.
Wow. Wow. I love you, West Virginia. Mountain Mama, I love you.
Mountaineers.
You know. Alex gives us $1.99 to say SMU, it's an attempt to, quote, reboot that won't live up. Totally agree.
Nah.
Domer Wop.
Hey, Domer.
$2 more. Greed is good. Gordon Gecko.
Where's the Italian?
Greed is good. Wall Street was such a good movie. So good. Matt Ritson for $2. Stanford got dirty money, can't in the ACC, so whine again.
Yeah.
I think there's so much dysfunction in ACC membership right now. I think that Florida State is indicative of the dysfunction, not necessarily the dysfunction.
Right.
I think Florida State is one of many who wished they were flying different flags these days.
Yeah.
And I think it is very clear that, and maybe this is where your belief in on-field, on-court performance, what's Miami done for the past 10 years?
Nothing.
Occasionally made a run in basketball. But they haven't been relevant in college football for years.
They haven't done anything in either sport that's worth mentioning. Just because you got to the round of 64.
I would go easy on that. Miami basketball actually Miami has a quality basketball program. Now, does that mean they go to Elite Eights and Final Fours? And no. They're a quality basketball product at Miami. There's no question. But that's not even, in my opinion, their real value. The athlete, the quality of athlete that comes out of SoFlo is just so good. Mm-hmm. South Florida athletics is, which is why I talk about, South Florida, the University of South Florida. Because I think if you're the Big 12 cornering the market on Tampa and Orlando, you own that state. You own that state. And for my money, Miami's biggest value is the caliber of athlete that they give you. Now, their biggest detraction, frankly, is the political scene there.
Yeah.
And they brought home their favorite son, Mario Cristobal, and there are people who would like to fire him already.
Yeah, look, maybe they're a little better than I thought. Yeah, Final Four last year.
Yes,
I guess. I don't know, dude. I don't know. I'm not sold. Dude.
I think Miami is a double-edged sword. But I think if Miami were the only issue, fine, you'd have Stanford and Cal in the ACC. But they're not, because you need to convert Clemson and North Carolina, and I just don't see that happening.
I really feel like that there's levels to this game. Like in college athletics, man, you're in that top cut, right? If you're the Georgias, Alabamas, those every year college football playoff teams, the Ohio States, Michigans, you got that cut of school that's no doubt about it. If you could get them, you would do anything to get them. And those schools are always going to be protected and always going to be fine. But as you go down the list, I don't want to have to sell my school's value.
Yeah.
I don't want to have to be in a place where I got to be okay, yeah, we're Miami, went to the Final Four this season, this past tournament, 2023. And we get to the tournament, pretty regularly, but we haven't won in a minute. And, we brought Cristobal into our football program, and that didn't really work out for us. And, what is Miami's educational ranking? Jesus. Let's see.
You should not look at this.
55th in the country. Okay, so we're ranked 55th in the country in education. You're having to.
I'm telling you,
do you
there's
see what
value
I mean?
there.
But
There's
there's
value
value,
there.
but you have to justify. You have to sell your value. Where it's like with USC, you don't have to sell your value, right? With TCU,
Georgia, Alabama.
TCU doesn't have to sell their value as much
The
because
big
they've
boys
won recently.
Listen, the big boys don't have to sell themselves.
No,
I get that. But these are not the big boys we're playing with. Stanford, breaking news, doesn't have to sell itself. Stanford has value. Well,
I disagree. I think that's all Stanford's doing right now. Stanford's having to say, okay, yeah, I understand ACC, folks. You don't want to bring Cal in. So what are we going to do about bringing in another school, right? That's what Stanford's having to do.
Yeah.
And I feel like before that, Stanford, had to try to sell itself to the Big Ten, and the Big Ten said no because the Big Ten wanted to wait on the ACC grant of rights to expire. Like, there's a reason. Like, let's not beat around the bush. There's a reason Stanford's not in a conference right now. Like, we need to accept that, in my opinion. Like, there's a reason.
And what do you mean by that?
There's a reason, dude. If Stanford, right, and I'm not trying to be outlandish, but if Stanford was so valuable, if Stanford didn't have to sell itself, would they not have gotten picked up by someone already? And I know, hey, you got to have even numbers. When you're talking about a school that plays football and basketball, like, you can't just add them alone.
You're not going to take Stanford over Cal or Oregon and Washington. You're not doing that. But nobody's doing that.
But if you pick up Oregon and Washington, why wouldn't you take Stanford and then one more?
Because I believe that the Big Ten is going to get Notre Dame and North Carolina. I think that's going to happen. And I think they know if they go to 20, that's an awfully difficult cap to break.
So is it fair to say then that they value those two over Stanford more?
Sir, I think Notre Dame is the prize of expansion.
But like UNC. Like, I think UNC versus Stanford is a perfectly fine conversation to have, value-wise, right? Like, the Big Ten's right in the middle of the country. Okay, UNC has been on ESPN more, but that shouldn't hurt Stanford because we know Stanford's been in a dreadful position with their TV contract.
I think North Carolina is more valuable because they bring you a high level of education. They bring you a dominant fan base. And one of the other things that nobody talks about with Stanford is they have a very small student body.
Well, that's true.
Stanford is and I don't think people realize this. And I obviously, because I work there and covered Stanford athletics, I know this. Stanford has a very small campus. It's a very small enrollment. It's not Michigan. It's not.
So Stanford's got 35,360 students every year.
You're not some massive powerhouse university that's going to put 100,000 fans in a football stadium. The Farm, which is their home field, is rarely ever half full.
Yeah.
That's just not the culture at Stanford. Now, basketball is a little different at Stanford. But my point is, if you look at the alumni and if you look at on average their student body, Stanford is a small university. There's this misconception that Stanford is somehow again like Michigan. It's not. It's not. Cal, there is very little passion for athletics in the Bay Area for Cal.
Right.
Very, very little. And I continue to try and preach this message. You're not adding Stanford and Cal because you want Stanford and Cal in your TV market. You're adding Stanford and Cal because you want the Bay Area, which has a phenomenal sports fan base. Phenomenal. But you're not going to get Stanford and Cal fans turning on the TV.
Right.
But you are going to get, you're going to get a nice melting pot of everything that's West Coast.
Yeah.
Because there's so much money there.
Yeah.
So I think Stanford, in my opinion,
yeah,
Stanford is fighting a perception versus reality.
Oh, I agree with that completely.
And I think Stanford's in a position where they don't have to take your bullshit, and they're not going to. You don't want us here, fine, we don't want to be here. And hey, if you want us, we'd love to be part of your conference, but if you're gonna be a burr in our crotch, we're not interested in it.
See, and that's so interesting because I think that's true. I think that's their philosophy, but like the perception versus reality thing, I think that's the argument. Now, it's not whether Stanford's valuable or not. I don't think that's the perception versus reality conversation. I think it's Stanford's perception that they don't necessarily need the ACC as an example. Whereas the ACC schools are sitting there saying, well, wait, hold on a second. What do you mean? You're not in a conference right now. You don't have a home. You're really telling me you're going to go independent? And so if you think about two people sitting in a room and Stanford's on one side and ACC's on the other, and Stanford's saying, I don't need you guys, but I'd love to be in your conference. Like the ACC, I would guess, is going to take that as disrespectful. And so it's like those two kind of come together. No, because I don't think
that's the question being asked of Stanford. I don't think, and you know the biggest problem here, I don't think there's a whole lot of direct A to B conversation going on with the ACC and Stanford.
You think we're playing telephone?
I think we are passing the bottle.
Yeah.
And I think that's part of the problem. And I think the ACC is very dysfunctional. I think there is a large swath of the ACC that would love to add Stanford and Cal.
Yeah.
And I think there are 4 schools who will never let it happen.
And that's enough to make it not happen.
And I am as sure as I am sitting here telling you it is Clemson, Florida State, North Carolina, and I believe it's Miami.
Yeah.
I know there's dissension about who that 4th school is. I'm telling you, I am a firm believer it's Miami. All right, Football 50 coming up in just a bit. But I want to get a couple more in here. Raptor88 says, hi, guys. Let's have a great show. Thank you. I appreciate that. Provo Cougar fan. Wow, Raptor88's been a member for 6 months.
Let's go, Raptor. Appreciate you,
bro. You guys are unbelievable. Thank you, Raptor. Provo Cougar fan gives us $5 to say, donation for your next background board, the Monty and Jake show. No, it's not like that.
It's not like that.
Monty is not... yes, people call me Monty, but Monty is... Monty
it's a brand,
is
bro.
It's this deity that is, well, I am godlike too, but that's it. So it's this larger, entity. And yeah, I'm fat, but not that large. So
pardon me.
Monty is Monty is like all encompassing.
I mean, I'm almost like Notre Dame.
But Coach, I don't know how quite to say it, but Jake doesn't matter. That's really probably the most succinct way.
Waves in opposition.
I mean, we can put the Jakey Two Holes show back there if you want, but I don't think that'll work. That doesn't quite have the role.
Yeah, you got to get a booster seat first.
Yeah, dude. I mean, that doesn't quite have the role, in my opinion.